You can't really expect your business to compete without some good, solid online reviews, but with three major players, we got Yelp, Google reviews, and Facebook recommendations. Which of these platforms is going to be the most beneficial for you to really focus on building up the most? In this video, I'm putting all three head to head so that you can see what's good about each, what's bad, specific cases where one might be better over another, and then finally, I'm going to have a pretty clear-cut winner to share with you in the end because one really does stand out in my opinion. Because let's face it, right? As important as online reviews are for any business, you always need to prioritize because time's limited, right? And by prioritizing the review platform that you want to focus on, you can let your customers know where they should go to leave a review because here's the thing, right? People usually want to be helpful, but you need to make it just ridiculously easy on them, and making it easy includes telling them exactly what you want and where they need to go. Okay, so first off, let's talk about what Google reviews, Yelp, and Facebook recommendations all have in common. So for starters, they're all going to be extremely valuable to your visibility as a brand. In the past few years, Google's been using Yelp reviews and Facebook recommendations in their search algorithm, meaning even if you only had reviews on Yelp and none on Google, those Yelp reviews would still help your SEO. Not as much as a Google review would, but we'll get to that in a bit. So at the end of the day, any positive review you can get is a valuable one. And let's face it, if you're around long enough, you're going to naturally get reviews across all of them, and that's actually a really good thing. It looks natural. Okay, so let's start off with Yelp. So Yelp's a pretty mixed bag in my opinion, because on one hand, it's probably the most valuable option for certain business categories. On the other, it can be super frustrating dealing with them. So what they do is they hide a ton of reviews. So if you were to get all these amazing 5-star reviews from real customers, mind you, Yelp still may not believe they're real and they're just gonna hide them. Usually this happens when someone leaves a first-time review or if they notice you're getting a lot of reviews at one time. So Yelp's actually on the record saying they do not want you asking your customers to leave reviews. So they figure whenever someone's leaving one for the first time that they've probably been asked to do it, and they're just gonna throw it away. The other downside to Yelp is something I've only heard about and I cannot say for positive it's true, but I've honestly heard it from enough business owners that I do think there's going to be some degree of truth to it. So what I've heard can happen is once you start getting reviews, or once you set up your Yelp account, you might get a call from a Yelp representative trying to sell you on their advertising, which would basically feature you above other listings on the platform. Fine, but the scandalous part is sometimes this gets a little mafia, meaning if you turn them down or if you do opt in for paid advertising and then suddenly stop, people have reported, allegedly, that Yelp actually turns up the negative reviews and turns down the positive ones, kind of as a retaliation effort. I actually watched a documentary all about this, and it seems pretty shady, but as with anything, you gotta take it all with a grain of salt. So all I'm saying is you might not want to put all your eggs in the Yelp basket. Their business model just depends too much on those paid placements in a way that Facebook and Google don't really get into. Trust me, they make money, but it's not off of their reviews. But now let's talk about why you might still want to consider Yelp. So first of all, Apple Maps uses Yelp's ratings when people search for businesses on that app. And the other bigger reason is there are just a few business categories that kind of need good Yelp reviews and lots of them. I'm mostly talking about restaurants here, bars too, and home service businesses like plumbers, contractors, carpet cleaners, that kind of thing. People are just kind of trained to go to Yelp to look up reviews on those types of businesses. I know for me personally, if I'm looking for a new restaurant to check out, or when I was actually trying to find a contractor to redo my kitchen here, I went to Yelp to find those people. So if you know your customers are finding you on Yelp or are finding your competition on Yelp, you probably need to make that a priority. But I'd be very careful about ever using their paid advertising. I've just heard way too many horror stories about the ads. First of all, not really even working well in the first place. They don't really get a good ROI on them. Then, if and when you decide to pull the plug and just rank in there organically, you might start to see a lot of those 5-star reviews disappear, and a lot of those 1-star reviews pop up instead. Okay, so now what about Google reviews? So these are the ones that show up on the sidebar whenever anyone searches you out by name, and they also show up in those map pack listings. I think these reviews are just incredibly valuable, particularly if you're a local business or if you're trying to be found in search at all, really. So obviously Google pretty much owns search, we all know that, so it only makes sense to play in their sandbox by their rules if you want them to reward you with higher rankings, because star ratings and reviews are actually a really big ranking factor now, especially in those local map results. And let's just forget about the SEO value for a second. So imagine showing up here in the map and having either a really low star count, low review count, or even no reviews at all, right? Nobody's gonna call the 3rd place option here. So not only will lots of good positive reviews help you rank here in the first place, but they'll help you to stand out among the other options too. And here's a really clear stat for you. 64% of people will use Google to find a business compared to only 45% who use Yelp to find one. And Google doesn't have any policies either against asking customers to leave reviews, unlike Yelp. They don't want you incentivizing or paying people for these reviews, but asking and encouraging is totally within playing by the rules. And that brings us to Facebook recommendations. Yep, they do not use the word reviews at all. They call them recommendations. And they don't have a 5-star system like the other guys. They just ask people, do you recommend this business? And it's a simple yes or no answer. So this is a tough one because on one hand, only 23% of people turn to Facebook when vetting a business compared to that 64% on Google, but don't count it out completely just yet, and here's why. When somebody does leave a recommendation of your business, it asks them who they'd like to share it with, and I'm guessing most won't choose the only me option because that kind of suggests that nobody's ever gonna see it, in which case, who would bother, right? So I think you see where this is going. So when someone leaves a recommendation, it's not just gonna go to your business's Facebook page, but it's also gonna get shared to at least some of your customers' friends. Now, this can be incredibly valuable, especially if you run a business with mass appeal that almost anyone can use. Because honestly, the more niche down you are, the less valuable those recommendations are going to be to a general audience. But if you're a restaurant or a car wash or a lawn care company, odds are your customers' friends could use you too. But keep in mind, those posts are fleeting, right? They definitely have diminishing returns and a short shelf life, even after just a few hours. So for that reason, and for everything I've talked about in this video, my blanket recommendation for most of you watching this is to focus first and foremost on building up a good number of 5-star Google reviews. So they really do provide the biggest impact on your visibility and your ability to build trust online. So unless you know that your customers are looking for you on Yelp, again, if you're a restaurant or a home service provider, I think Google's gonna be your best bet here. But remember, people will naturally leave reviews on their platform of choice, and that's even better because it's going to start to create a really natural review profile that Google would expect from any good business. So now let's talk about how to get more of those 5-star Google reviews for your business. I've got some super actionable tips to make it as easy on you as possible. Just click right here for my advice and tactics that I've used very successfully. Now, this is the same stuff I tell my paid coaching clients, so click right here and get all the good stuff for free. So I'll see you in that video.